Hello and welcome to the Mind Body Soil podcast, a podcast where we explore the innate connection between the mind, the body and the soil. This podcast is proudly brought to you by Smart Soil. Smart Soil is an online education platform creating courses and providing resources from farmers for farmers. Join us as we share the stories and experiences from those dedicated to regenerating ecosystems, communities and human beings. This week on the Mind Body Soil podcast, we are lucky enough to be joined by Jane Slattery. Jane Slattery is the co-founder of Natural Intelligence Farming and an absolute legend in this space of animal health, human health and soil health, all of our favourite things. So welcome to the show, Jane.
Hello. It's nice to
So good to have you here. And thanks for taking the time today, and I really appreciate you showing up, you being brave. I know this is quite new to you, and it's a lot harder to connect sometimes, through this medium. So we'll do our best. And I wanted to start actually on a point. So when I met you for the first time, would have been only a couple of months ago at the Natural Intelligence Farming Field Day, hosted by Nutrisoil out at Diane Ian's place. When you showed up and you rolled up, I'd never even seen a picture of you at this stage. So you walk in and I met you and we didn't exchange names straight away, but you said, I know you. And I thought, I know you too. But I'd never seen a picture of you. And I just felt, I don't know, it was something profound. But I just felt that seeing, like when you see someone, or I felt like you saw me and I saw you. How is that common for you? Is that, is that something that happens a lot for you, Jane?
Yes, funny enough, it actually does, because it just feels like, just like you sort of said, you can just feel the person and it's like you've known them forever.
Yeah.
So yeah, it happens all the time.
Okay. And what do you think that is? Do you think, is that souls or what?
It's soul. I think it's souls communicating. I don't think it's physical bodies. It's a soul connection. And for some reason, there's some meeting and you meet up and it's like, oh, have we done this before? Have we been here before? How do we explain it? I don't know. That's my way of explaining it.
Yeah. And just so we can set a bit of context and paint a bit of a picture here, could you explain your work and what you're doing currently? And then we can go a little bit further back a bit later on, but just how would you explain what you do at the moment?
Okay, right at the moment, my focus is probably very much people, and it's helping people to connect with their unconditional self. And to do that, it's helping them to, and it's guiding them. So guiding and mentoring them to free themselves of conditions and judgments. So, and those conditions and judgments are not necessarily things that have happened in this life. It can be genetical. How do we explain all of this? Not really sure, but there's plenty of understanding sort of thing to come out now. But it's like through DNA, there are things that can pass down from, through many generations, and they can be with someone and then they might have this fear of something and they don't really understand why they have it, because it's not something that's happened to them in this lifetime. And it just can stop them from doing things that they really feel like they want to do, but they just can't do it.
Yeah. And so often, so in most cases, are people that you're working with, are they people that are coming to you feeling like they have something, or is it something that might be sitting in their blind spot and, like you're saying, just playing out in dramas or whatever it is in their lives? Like
it's definitely sitting in their blind spot.
Yeah.
And why they resonate with me, I can't really answer that, other than they know that there's something. And then once we start working through whatever it is, we can just sort of pinpoint it, and then it's profound what happens.
Yeah. Oh, it is.
I really do struggle to put it into words, because it's it's probably more of a feeling than it is words.
Yeah.
And probably putting it into words, I can't think of any two people that I've worked with the same. It's everybody's unique, and whatever comes up with one person to another is just so different. And it's awesome because you just never know. And that's the fun part.
Yeah.
That was probably a little bit challenging in the beginning, because it's like, well, what's going to happen? But now I just look at that as just, okay, I wonder what today's going to bring. And That's
awesome. And so predominantly farmers, are you working with landholders, caretakers?
Predominantly, yes, predominantly farmers, because of the natural intelligence farming aspect of it. But there are people that do come to me that are not necessarily farmers. Funny enough, if they're not farmers, they're passionate about food, or they're passionate about something, which all links back to farming anyway. I mean, without farmers, we wouldn't have anything, really, would we?
Oh, absolutely. And so your background, Jane, farming family, is that correct? Or your dad was in the farming game, wasn't he?
Yeah, farming. My dad was in farming and his parents were in farming. So farming all the way through. So definitely a country person, not a city person.
Yes. No, they're the best kind. No offense, city people. We love you too.
Yep.
Okay, that's really cool. And so there's no easy way to get to, well, how did you uncover that you had this ability, or that you got into this work? But initially it started with the animals, is that right? You're picking this up. It was a similar sort of thing, like a feeling that you were getting when you were dealing with animals. Could you just take us through a little bit?
Well, what actually happened was when my dad ended up having a heart attack, and so he did all the technical side of the company when I worked with the animal nutrition. And so there wasn't really anyone else to step into his boots, if you like, except me. And I guess I used to sometimes just sit there for hours just listening to what he was saying. Back in those days, I couldn't hear what the people on the other end of the phone were saying. I could just hear what my dad how he was responding to them. Yeah. I understood the concept really well, and back then it was email, and they would report intakes of how much of the products the animals were consuming. And then from that would be a bit like a program. And then from the way that they consume the products, to be able to go back and say, you need to add a bit of this to that and whatever. And it was all custom blending on farm. Mm-hmm. And I just found that once I started typing away on the computer and connecting with the people, there was just something that I was picking up a little bit different. And there was a couple of people that said, if you hadn't have taken over, like stepped into this role, they said that they didn't think that they would still be there. So I didn't really understand any of that then, but I started to, become more aware, working with different farmers. There was organic farmers, there was biodynamic farmers, there was just conventional farmers. So I guess I started to sort of learn a little bit more, and then, you'd start talking to someone and I'd say, oh, that really resonates with me. I really get that. And so from there, it just sort of grew and developed to then when I was sort of working with the animals, so all very much animal related. I guess the biggest point was when the animals said to me, we need energy. And the product range used to have feed value indicators that all monitored a different energy, like gross energy, digestible energy, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But when they actually said we need energy, I'm thinking, well, what's energy? What are you talking about? And what are you trying to tell me? Not what are you talking about? What you're trying to tell me. So I started playing around with complex carbohydrates and simple sugars, namely starch and sugar, because they kept saying we don't want protein. We don't want protein. Okay, well, if you don't want protein, you want that. Okay, but they didn't want grains because they weren't sort of saying that. They enjoy it, and they always did well when they're on grasses or pasture. Yeah. And so when that happened, I just started playing around. And when they ate the starch or the sugar, they used to, they'd sometimes take the starch, sometimes the sugar. And you'd think that they'd just eat the sugar. Like, you know, if you put that out free choice, you think anything would just eat it. But they wouldn't. They'd sometimes take, So, but when they did that, they stopped taking all of the vitamin mineral supplements. They didn't touch them as long as they were kept up. And I thought, wow, that's really unusual. There was always fiber and things like that. So it wasn't like this is all they had. And so then it was just through that I started playing around, and I guess had my own little R&D, research and development little thing that I used to do. I had like a bit of a McDonald's farm where I had all sorts of animals and played around with different things. And I felt that I had to do that because when I took over from Dad, I didn't know what Dad knew. So I had to know myself that it was, because if I couldn't just go from, Dad said this, so you do this. It was, I had to figure it out. And I was also very much, I never gelled much with the conventional way. I always felt that there was a natural way. So that was always in me. And and so from there, it was like, okay, let's do, this has got something. And then I really understood from there that if they could get the energy that they needed and had the fiber and everything, they could actually make their own protein. So that's what they were really telling me, which is where your enzymes and amino acids come in. And now, I didn't know then, but what I believe I know now is what they were really trying to say is they didn't really want the nitrogen in the way people understand nitrogen, because that's not a true protein. And we all know that excess nitrogen or nitrogen in the wrong form will kill an animal. So that became a lot where then it was about, so you need the energy. Why do you need the energy? Well, that must be to do, so I knew it was all to do with the gut. And then that started to come about the microbiome and feed. So the animal, we called it metabolic. So to get the animal metabolically healthy, which is basically all to do with microbiome.
Absolutely. It's well, it's across the board, isn't it? If we can be metabolically healthy, then we're healthy too. That's really cool. So the feed, just to get a gauge for people that may not be familiar with the free choice mineral system, is that what they called it? So that's giving the animals a wide range of, or wide choice of foods and letting them select, is that right?
So there was 7 products in total. There was 2 supplements and there was 5 feed value indicators. And so those 7 products would get put out in a feeder, and each product would get put out in a different container within the feeder. And then the animals would go and pick and choose whatever it was that they individually needed. So you might have had, a mob of sheep or a herd of cattle, whatever. Each one of those animals didn't necessarily need exactly the same balance of minerals on any given day. So that's why we call it's free choice system. It was called Annutriculture, and the company that I had then was called Hingy Rural Proprietary Limited. Awesome. So worked with farmers all over Australia.
Oh, amazing. And continuing that good work today, but just in a different format, which is what excites us so much about your work. And I mean, it's pretty bloody awesome, because what we're about and this podcast is really aiming to do is to really get across the point that without a healthy farmer, the farm health suffers and the animal health suffers. Not to mention that, people are unhappy and in farming especially, but, the product that they produce will not be as good as if they're healthy and vibrant and metabolically healthy as well. So I'd really like to maybe we can start on the natural intelligence farming thread, and you can explain a little bit about what it is to you, and then how you ran into Diane and got started with them.
Well, so the natural intelligence, I guess, has evolved from the Annutriculture. So because Diane were working with Annutriculture, that's how I actually met them, and they were offering the products. And I used to always find where, how can farmers do this? Like a lot of farmers could only offer the products to 1 or 2 mobs. They might have 10 mobs, but it was very labor intensive, huge, amazing results. A lot of it was about so that there was no drenching, dipping, because if the animal was healthy, it was able to resist internal and external parasites. But it was just sort of seemed a little bit pointless if they could only feed some animals and not like offer the products to some animals and not offer to all of them.
Yeah.
It was expensive. It was expensive though because that was highlighting just how out of balance things were on the farm. And so I ended up doing a trip. I can't remember how it actually happened, but Western Australia was in a drought, and some of the farmers I was working with said, you know, you need to come over here. And basically, one of them picked me up. Well, him and his wife picked me up from the airport, and they drove me all around to see these different farms that I'd been working with. And I just got an absolute shock, because I thought, wow, there's animals that have got products, there's animals that don't have products. The animals that did have products were doing pretty good. The animals that didn't were doing terrible, because it was a drought. Mm-hmm. And from there, it was like, there's got to be a better way. And that's where I guess, so it sort of is where all the starch and the sugar side of it came in. And fortunately, I don't know, dynamite clicked. Probably one of those things like what you said in the beginning. Yeah. And I was exploring things about myself, and I guess I needed to open up to somebody. And when we did catch up on farm, I mean, we were working together before then, and we just we learned about dowsing. Mm-hmm. I learned to muscle test, and I used a pendulum. So we just started asking lots of questions. We had no idea what we were doing in the early stages, but through asking questions, we were getting all this information. Mm-hmm. And from that, we were just basically following that with blind faith. And we got to learn, and it wasn't just Di and myself, there was a couple of other people that worked that way as well, because I got introduced to people that were namely organic or biodynamic farmers that started to open up, that they did DAOs and things like that. And so when I learned to muscle test, I was like, I had a tool. Mm-hmm. And I had a tool to ask questions about what it's like information would just pop into my head, or it would just come from, where am I getting this from? It's not out of a book. I'm not reading it. So I'm not a big reader. Yeah. And so this was a way of me being able to clarify. I go, is this something I need to understand? Yes. Okay. What do I need to understand? So I just learned to work with it, and then Di and we sort of worked with it. So I sort of helped Di to understand, and then we just asked the questions. And so I guess what we were doing was we were asking questions. Maybe that's what we call the natural intelligence of the natural intelligence, to understand what it was that we could do different. The way that I look at it is so that the earth could actually heal itself. Yes. Yeah, I'm not a big one for saying that we don't need to heal the earth. The earth can heal itself. Yes. We need to learn how to heal ourselves and get out the way, which is all part of the natural intelligence as well. And that love, gratitude and respect. Yeah. That's a huge part of it.
That's right. We've got to massage Mother Nature, not bloody hit her with a stick all the time.
Yeah. Or kill everything. Or if it's green. Yeah. Like, oh, there's a weed out there. It's green. Oh, better kill it.
Yeah, well, that's right. It's funny.
Instead, looking at that as an indicator. Well, why is that there? And that's just Mother Nature's put that there to try and heal something. Yeah. So
So two things, Jane. The dowsing. What exactly is dowsing? Because we talked about drenching. Someone could maybe think that we're talking about dousing a sheep or something.
Yep.
So we better clarify that, and then I'd like to. I'll go to the next point after that. We'll see where it goes.
Well, probably the best way of explaining dowsing is water divining. So water divining, use divining rods. Yeah. There are people out there that are really good at doing that. Mm-hmm. There's other people that probably doubt themselves. But through the tool of dowsing, using divining rods, or some people might use a pendulum. Yep. I use muscle testing, which comes from a form of kinesiology. Okay. We've learned we can ask questions. We can ask to get yes, no answers.
And you have to be super clear to establish that connection, right? Like the
totally. And my wording for that has always been get out of head and get into heart. Yeah. So you need to be connected within yourself. Mm-hmm. I am aware of many people that have been dowsing, and they just put it down because but it's maybe that's, and I'm not here to, whatever anybody does, but that could be that maybe they often say to me, I don't know whether it's my head, is my head, it's like my head's telling me what to do. I haven't actually found that connection within self. I haven't reconnected. It's like, I would say, and if someone feels separated in themselves, the dowsing's not going to work very well. Okay. If you feel whole and complete and fulfilled, the dowsing is very different. And that's part of the process of working with the people, is to help them to reconnect with themselves. It's that separation that many people on the planet feel. It's working through that and then coming back into self and not having that feeling, not feeling like they need to be looking outside of themselves for something, because everything they have is actually within them. They were born with it, and they just got separated from it.
That's really beautiful, and it is a lesson for everyone, and not just someone that is trying to make better decisions on farm, but there's something to be learnt in that, in, like you're saying, in fulfillment and feeling whole and trusting, and not being separated. I mean, if everyone were feeling that connection around them, then how could you disrespect Mother Earth the way that we do? It would be a different place. Or
starts with or one another. And the other thing is, you can't, if you feel that, you can't disrespect yourself, because there's this sense of responsibility. So you feel responsible to yourself, and because you feel responsible to yourself, you look at everything just through different eyes, and it feels different. And the things that maybe used to, I know I've gone through it myself. Like, I wouldn't be doing this if I hadn't been on the journey that I've been on. And, I was always blame that because of this and blame that, but it wasn't that. It was things that were, that I needed to change in me, so that I wasn't being drawn out of myself and looking outside of myself for things that, no one else could give me what I needed. I had to find what it was that I needed. To probably the best way to explain that is, and I probably don't know that I've said this before, but it's something that a lot of people go through. But I did get bullied, but I sort of used to look at it and think, well, why did that happen? Because anybody that happens to, it happens to from a young age, and it actually keeps going, and it doesn't stop until, and everyone thinks it's the person, it's the people outside or whatever it is outside of them that's creating that, but it's not. I had to look inside, like do work on me and go, well, why am I attracting this? What can I do to change that? So you can't change anything outside of yourself, but you can change everything through yourself. So once I started working on that, it was amazing. It just stopped, because I didn't know that in the early days. I used to blame whatever, as you do, because that's all you knew. That's what you taught. Oh, well, it's such and such doing this or whatever, but it wasn't. It was me. So once I changed it in me, which is, whether that's genetical stuff, whatever, or whatever words we want to put to it, it was still up to me to change that. And probably until then, I didn't really know that I had a choice. Like, a lot of people think, oh yeah, whatever's happening in your life, that's, some people might call it your destiny. That's what's going to happen. That's what you're put up with. I don't actually believe that. I believe that we were put on this planet to grow and evolve and learn how to be better than what we might have been in the previous life. So this is where I'm talking about soul. And the physical body is very important in that soul's journey. So if the soul doesn't have a physical body that accepts it and understands it and communicates with it, how's it going to help it evolve? And vice versa. So that's just sort of, which is where the work comes in with the people, because that's part of that reconnecting to self. It's like, turning around and giving your physical body, turning around, giving your soul a hug.
Yeah.
Instead of looking outside of yourself, oh, can you give me a hug? I need you. It's like, no, there's something more important that, you know, your spiritual body, whatever words people want to use, because there's so many different words that people use. I tend to use soul. And so it's like, yeah, I do have a soul. My soul is important to me. And I need to understand it. I need to work with it and learn from it. And then vice versa, the soul giving my physical body a hug. Like, you don't really need anything once that happens.
Yeah, well, that's right. In the world we live in today, you know, you can see why it's gone that way. I mean, if we're constantly needing things externally, then we're always going to get more stuff, aren't we? You know, we don't. But if we're tapping into this and loving that, you know, you're fulfilled and you're going to live a peaceful life, and you don't need anything else. So I think that's really beautiful, and thank you for explaining that. You did a great job. And so are you seeing the narrative change around when you first started doing this work to now? Are people more accepting? Are they opening up a bit more?
Yes, definitely. So when I first started doing this, my work was really on the farm. My love when I started was definitely the animals. And going back to the switch from Annutriculture to natural intelligence evolving, part of that journey was that in working with the starches and sugars, it ended up going to I just heard this voice, and it's, Jane, you need to work with the people. It's like, no, I don't need to work with the people. I'm quite happy working with the animals. It's like, no, Jane, you need to work with the people. And I remember saying that to Di. I said, Di, I've got to do work. I need to understand. It's like, need to do work with people. And it was really funny because when we did that, the animals actually stopped taking the starches and the sugars as well. They didn't take anything. And not knowing anything or understanding then, but it was like they stopped everything. And it was like, because something changed in the people. And because something changed in the people, then it's like they either had access to something, or because something changed in the people, they weren't maybe taking what the animals needed access to. And so that was interesting because it would hold for a certain amount of time. And then it was almost like maybe what happened is the people went back to what they were, because it was sort of short term. Because it wasn't the people doing work on themselves. It was like me sort of probably, oh, I need to do this. And I didn't understand, there wasn't the understanding. So it's evolved from doing work on the farms, working with the animals, learning how to help the animals access the energy, which is probably where it was, rather than having a physical product. And then it would still, and then to transitioning, it's hard to explain how, but it's transitioning to the people. And then it was, I guess, I don't know, it's really hard to put it into words, because one word will be appropriate for one person, but not for another. But it was, I guess I looked at, I was working like a healer, I guess, thinking that I needed to be one that did the work, but it would never hold. It's like it would last for a little bit, and then things would sort of go back to where they were. And so that was probably around the stage when I knew I needed to just go and understand and be in amongst people. And from there to, not that I accepted it, I've only probably just recently accepted how important it is to work with the people. But it was, I could be in two worlds. So I could have the farming side and I could be working with the people. It's, I don't know, probably get stuck. Yeah.
Did you find yourself getting drained in those instances where you were
very much,
where it wasn't holding? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, very much. So that's where it was like, this isn't good for me.
Yeah.
So I guess I had to find a way. I needed to understand. And also I picked up on so much stuff. So I picked up on things that it was like, why am I picking up on this? It's just too much information. So I literally had to shut that all down. And that's where I decided to close down the business and take this path, not knowing where I was going, probably a bit like a lost soul at that point, but in a good way, and plonked myself in a city and lots of people.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, searching for, so trying to work out how do I keep it shut down. I just shut it down, and the way of shutting it down was drink alcohol, smoke cigarettes, do all those things, shut it off. And plus thought I was probably going a little bit weird, a bit too woo-woo. And but then just did, job in the city. And from that, every now and again, somebody would just get through. And I was like, wow, do I really need to say this to this person? Yes, you do. And then that showed me I don't need to be open. I don't need to be open to everything. I can be closed down. And if there is something that needs to be said or whatever, it'll just come. And from that, I just sat with that all through this. Always had connection with Diane, like wouldn't have been able to do it without them. We're like three peas in a pod, I guess. But this was really important, this bit, because that was the bit that helped me to understand, wow, people can take a lot. They can, because that draining, why am I being drained? So I had to work out how to do this without getting drained. And that's when I needed to do the work on myself. And through that, learn a language and, so that I could at least speak some sort of language to people when they decided to come to me.
Totally. And that's so important, isn't it? It's develop. And this isn't easy to develop language for. This is pretty uncharted ground. It's been very reductionist, scientific sort of science that has been widely adopted. So, we're out on the fringe here, and it's a good place to be. It's where all the exciting stuff happens.
It is exciting.
Bloody oath. So where do you start? You get a farmer or a couple that are on their land, they're having some trouble. You feel something when you're with them, or they're coming to you. And then, what's the first step? Just chatting and uncovering that they may have something, or identifying what it is that they're carrying?
For starters, I'm not really easy to find. I'm probably getting easier to find since AJ did a podcast on me, Nicola did a podcast on me. You're doing this, and I'm actually, this is a video. And then you did a little video when we were at the event at Diane's. So it's been interesting because I don't really advertise. I don't do any of that. If somebody needs to find me, they will find me. My work until sort of relatively recently has pretty much been all remote. So when somebody contacted me, I would just say, I need a map. And from the map, I would get guided to somewhere on the map, and that would then start a conversation. So it's like, I'm being guided to here, some other bits and pieces that come through. And usually it's like, how did you pick up on that? Why did you get taken to there? I don't know, but this is where I've been guided. And then it just starts from there. And like I just said before it was very much about doing work on the actual piece of earth that they're the caretaker of. And now I've sort of changed that around, and I've made it very much, it's work on self first. Once they've done work on self, then they're more empowered, and then they can go out there and they can intuitively work with their country, with that piece of earth that has chosen them. So whereas before I didn't know how to help people to understand that, I do now. And then I'm not, otherwise it's like the responsibility all gets put on me to, and it's not that that's what anybody was asking for. It's just something that I've learned as I've gone along. And then, then they can go out there and they can actually ask the questions if there's something, but they have belief and trust in themselves when they get to that point. And we do things, as we're going along, but very much so it is working on self first.
Wow.
And I've changed it to that now, and I won't that's probably a guideline that I have, if I was going to call it anything. It's like,
well, and
it's better. And from there, it's like, well, okay, this is how it works. This is how we need to work. Yeah, no worries, that's fine. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
you said something there that was quite profound, I think, is that the piece of earth chooses the person. Can you
the caretakers?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's a bit like if you just for any person, if you go and buy a house or whatever, the house normally chooses you. You don't just go and buy a house. I mean, maybe in the last couple of years, people have been buying things just on the internet and maybe walking in there. I don't know whether they then maybe, I don't know how that's working.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's and there'll be versions of that, because I'm sure there's corporates that sort of are purchasing land, has that chosen them? I don't know. But a true farmer, like someone that wants a real caretaker, someone that is a caretaker, that piece of earth has chosen them. And it may have been something that's been handed down, but why is it that if it's handed down from one generation to another, very rarely is it handed down and all of the children are on it? It's normally there's, one or two that are still chosen over the others. It's so, and that's my probably thing, is because I don't believe that we come in and we connect. When we are, I guess, in our heart, then the earth will connect with us. I love your little logo thing. Yeah, because to me, when I saw that is, if I could have that to explain, because that's what I reckon it's almost like the microbes on the land connect with the microbes in the people and say, you're matched to be here with us. You need to work with us. You've got something. That's where, when we're talking microbial, probably industrial ag is not really talking that way. I'm talking natural farming, because it is all about feeding the microbial life.
Thanks, Jane. You can have it. I'll send it over and you can take it around with you and show everyone, don't you?
Really? Because I just love it. It's just so spot on, because that's what everything is. Like, the whole,
that's right.
Our physical, our whole essence, everything is microbiome. And so that's why we need to be so careful about what we do, because it's all alive.
Totally.
And so if we don't treat it right, we're killing something that's alive.
That's right. Do you think that could have some play? Because I'm just thinking about, say, someone that this is new to, that may be like, oh, what do you mean feeling, blah, 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 like when the head's in the way. I'm just thinking that's a really good example about choosing a house or something. Like when you go somewhere and you're looking to buy a house for your family, you're waiting till something feels right, aren't you? So you're really trying to tap into that. There's not too many examples, I guess, in general culture where people are really trying to feel and connect that way. Maybe when you find your lover and you just know, or something, but I think, and is that sort of that feeling process that you're tapping into, or is it like on that sort of level, when, say, you're feeling something on land, or you know what I mean? I'm just trying to get like a bit of a comparative feeling, so someone can be like, okay, I've felt something like that before. Or
I think I mean, a home is pretty important to you, so that's probably why I use that one, because you're going to live there. You need to be happy with it, and so it is very much the same. I think that it goes deeper. So once that's the start, so that's probably like a physical, because you probably think you're choosing your home on what it physically offers you, but I think it's that when you really understand it at a deeper level, I feel like you feel it deeper as well, like it means more. And that's not to the point that you have to hang on to it. Like, if sometimes we move on because we need to evolve and so on. But it's a feeling. I mean, you feel it. I feel it in here. You don't feel it up here.
Yes.
You see it here. And then you feel it, but you also, there's sort of like communication as well. So I'm not really one that sees a lot, but I feel like I hear, like I have this, what they'd probably call clairaudience. So someone's talking to me and I can hear something behind what's being said. So it's like I can hear the, like the energy that's behind the words being said, which people can do, because you can hear that in a tone. Like somebody might say something, but they say it with a tone and go, that wasn't probably, so you'll pick up on it.
Like
you
the
know,
energy
that doesn't
behind
really,
it.
which that's the energy and the feeling. So you sort of feel that energy, and then you go, how's that energy feel? Is it a, and it's not about whether it's good or bad, but we do use those words. Is it a good feeling or is it a not so good feeling? So if it's good feeling, you're sort of going to go with it. But sometimes we just don't work with feeling. We just do. We block all that out because we're totally up here and we're being hurt here, or we're blocked. We don't want anything here. So then we can make choices that are not necessarily our choices. They might be choices that someone else is making for us. And then we go, well, that doesn't feel right. So it's not, there's no pleasure in it. There's no, like, it's
fulfillment.
It's boring. There's no life in it. There's no, I mean, something can be a little bit hard. That's okay if it's still giving, like it's, you're growing from it. But if it's just mundane and same thing, whatever, not learning, it's the wisdom.
Stagnating. Something just came up, well, in like yogic sort of philosophy or whatever, there's a thing called like Shakti Chalana, and it's like when you get goosebumps all over like your body, like when you feel something. It just popped in. It was a pop in.
There was a pop in. That's good. You're not in your head, David. So there's some space there to receive the pop in.
At last, it's probably just a sleep deprivation from the newborn, but no,
that's probably a good thing, though. You know what I mean? Because you're turned off to other things because you're focused on the newborn. Yeah,
absolutely. You know, and just I don't know, like it. I feel definitely in a space of evolution at the moment, or like I'm evolving, and there's obviously lots of challenges, and that's something I wanted to ask before. Is like this isn't like you get to that level and then it's linear, it's always there. Is this something that you're having to practice and to cultivate? Some days you might not be feeling it as much. Do you know what I'm saying? Like that feeling, or is it something that is consistent for you? Like it's just always there. Because I feel like for me, it's some days are better than others where I'll be a lot more open to seeing nature for what it is. Like it's the more unfiltered and unconditioned. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Unconditional.
Yeah. Whereas some days, when the head's busy and, you're just in do mode, you're just busy. It's hard you don't stop and look around or see anything, but I'm just always interested because say like meditation, for example, people think that, an experienced meditator will just sit down and bang, they're having this outer worldly experience every time. But it's not that at all. Like you might get that once in a lifetime, or, once on the odd occasion, if you're lucky, you have that really profound experience. But most of the time it's just that connection with the breath, or just slowing down and zooming out. And it's something you have to keep cultivating, right? And that's why I asked that question, because it'll be easy for someone to think, that I've felt it once, therefore I know now, and the head gets in the way, and then they think they've got it cracked. Whereas I think it's important to know that the practice goes on, and you can always evolve and grow.
Yeah, and it does. And the other thing, like to a lot of my clients, I say, remember, I've been doing this for a long time. So there's wisdom I can bring, and I can, provide guidance and understanding to, so it doesn't have to be a slower process. But you still got to learn. It's like, I feel like I can just snap into it. So I'm not really a meditator. I don't really do any of that. I do feel like I have an empty head most of the time. I'm not a big reader. I do try to, every now and again, people will send me books and say, you should read this, whatever. And I'll try to sort of scan it. To sit there and read the book, that's not really my thing. I've got the audiobook now, and sometimes, but even that, I'll get to it. It's like, it's just words. And I don't mean, there's no disrespect to that, because I have read books where I've read it from beginning to end. I couldn't put it down because there was something in there. It's like I could feel something in there. I feel like I can just drop in and out of it really easily, but I feel that that's because of the work that I've done on myself, which has been done over a long period of time. And to be able to switch from, you know, like I'll sometimes have, I don't know, maybe 4 or 6 clients in a day, and some of my appointments can be 3 hours, because I'm not in the habit of starting something and then leaving someone half where they're at and say, oh, we'll get back to that in a couple of weeks' time. It's like, whatever it is, it is. But I seem to be able to just, that one's, and just drop in, and that's gone, whatever. And it's only if there was sort of maybe something might pop in a day or 2 later or whatever, or something is a little bit, and then I'll always message back and say, there's still something I think we need, because that's the only time. But it's rare that happens, and I think that's because I don't have a time schedule. I don't go, oh, we just got an hour. It's whatever it takes. I just go with the flow, and it always seems to work out. So, but yes, you've got to do a lot of work on yourself, because learning to get out of head, turn head off, keep head turned off. I mean, I don't know. Do we actually need? We don't need a lot of the stuff that's in our head.
Totally.
It's important to who we are, but we don't need, it's like some people think they've got to hang on to it. It's like hoarding all this information.
That's right. And a lot of it's just being put there nowadays. You know, it's implanted by, whether it's the media or it's other people's shit as well. It's not just your own stuff that's going on.
And your own stuff's probably okay. It's the other shit that you don't need, that doesn't belong to you, that's what can actually, because you don't know what to do with it. No. So it's like, when that comes in, so what do I do with this? Because I don't really have a place for it. So it's learning to reflect a lot of things, learning to be able to live in this world and not be bothered by a lot of that stuff that's going on outside. And that's not an easy thing for a lot of people to do, because you know, it's it's all, that all comes down to fear, like all these things that are just projected.
And a lot of people are living in that fight or flight state all the time too, aren't they? Where they're reacting just all the time. They never, it's that what is it? The sympathetic nervous system is firing. So and that comes a lot. That's a lot to do with your breath as well. I mean, I found over the years too, it's quite profound. And probably the biggest thing that, you know, I got out of the yoga practice too was the breathing that you never even think about. You never get taught it at school or anything. It's like, hang on, we can breathe. We can breathe through our nose. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Life changing. That's really cool. So what about some simple steps, Jane, for people to maybe just quieten things down, or maybe connect to listen a bit better, whether it's to their spouse or to the land or whatever is coming to you? If you've got any tips to share for people.
I think learning to listen to self first. A lot of people want to, it's like we're in this, everybody wants to go and fix something. Like, it's like, we've got to fix this, we've got to fix that, we've got to fix this. Whereas it's almost like turning off to that and actually just, what is it? Really trying to understand, what is it that I need? Asking self that question. What is it I need? It might just be that I just need 10 minutes of space or quiet time. But people might like, you know, there are people in the world that don't believe that they're worth 10 minutes of silence time or time out. And they might be in fear to ask for that. So it's just trying to, it's all about looking in first, because there's no point looking out if someone is, so if someone's a caretaker of a piece of earth or whatever, and they're riddled with fear, let's just say that, then they're projecting that onto their environment. So the other thing I learned from animals is animals will take from humans. So animals, like a dog, for instance, a dog is unconditional. Everyone, most people, you know, have a dog. And the dog, and we've seen it in, you know, you watch on TV and you'll see where a dog has taken on its owner's characteristics. A dog is able to pick up on when somebody's going to have an epileptic fit or whatever. So the dog will actually it will sacrifice itself for its master. And they're just unconditional. That's what they'll do. Now, I learned that the animals will do, so the sheep, the cattle, horses, most people that work with natural horsemanship understand that about horses. The animals do that too, because they're unconditional. So all animals are unconditional. And my understanding is that it's only really humans that are judgmental and conditional. So one of my first lessons was learning how to free myself from the judgments and conditions so I could be unconditional. Yeah. And then when you're unconditional is when you can be in your heart.
Yeah. And so by unconditional, do you mean that it's not like I'm giving you this, so I need that in return? It's like, it's this, I'm yours, like.
Yeah, but it's unconditional to yourself first.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's that's, and it's really hard for people to do that because we've been taught we need to do things for others. Everything we do is always outside of ourselves.
Yeah.
So to do that back to ourselves, so we need to be unconditional to ourselves. You try, you just, I mean, you just sit there and you just go, okay, so you sort of just start, I can't even think of something to say, but blame is a big one. How many people blame themselves because of something that's happening?
Yeah. Right.
And yet, so if they're blaming themselves, then they're creating that. So why would we want to, and I mean, if we're being responsible and doing the right thing, we're unconditional, why do we need to be blaming ourselves? But we'll blame ourselves, and then with that will come unworthiness and all those sorts of things. And so then we're just going to spiral down. So all we're doing is opening up to attracting negative feedback. Whereas if we start to unpack some of that stuff, and there's tools and techniques that you can use. It does vary with different people. Like someone that can feel will work differently to somebody that can't feel. And there are people that can't feel. There are people that can see, so it's working with all the senses. Yeah, so, and some people don't even know. They got no idea. That's just, oh, this is just life. So I'm just living it. But they think that, and they're really focused. I guess we've created a death culture. If I'm going to put it into words, we have created a death culture. Yeah. We haven't created a life culture in our society.
No, that's right. Wow.
Because the focus is so much on death.
Yeah. And
then that's seen
fear of death.
Fear of death, and death is, you know, it's supposedly a sad experience. But why does it have to be? Yeah. I mean, if we go to the microbes, this is where your little thing again is amazing, because, you know, microbes, you know, they're alive. When they die, they become food for something else. Yeah. It's a self-sustaining cycle. And you know, my understanding is that that's where the nutrition comes from. So we talk about, you know, like what I used to do, make up all these, you know, manufacture and provide these vitamin mineral supplements, but the microbes can do that. So they can make the effect, you know, like we talk maybe, let's say sulfur. Well, I pick it up as like energetic sulfur, but that's microbes make that. Yeah, it might not be the same. It's a language we've used, and so you've got to use a language that people can relate to, but all the elements are in there. They're all above and below. The microbes know how to put them together. They know how to go and gather this and make this, and then when that microbe dies, maybe that becomes magnesium, and that one maybe becomes sulfur, and then that provides that to the plants. And yeah, it's like,
you mean I don't need just 3 elements in the right form to make a healthy plant?
I wonder what those 3 elements are. I'll just won't say what that is.
That's gold. No,
That's because of that's because that's the other thing too. We've been in a very masculine, with no fault, it is just what it is, but we've come from a very male dominated world, and I always say to people, male plant seed, female give life to it. So male plant seed, if there's no respect for female and what the female does, well, it's very hard for that seed to be given life to. So we are forced then to go and use 3 magical ingredients to grow food, and it does. It yields well, and there's definitely quantity and things like that.
Yes.
But is it providing the quality that we need to feed our microbiome? Probably not. Okay. No. And then, and then we will have disease, and we will have all these other things happen because the microbiome is not in balance. It's just putting things in perspective. And so the female component is very important, and that's probably one thing that I get with most when I start with farmers. It's normally a male-female relationship, and the female doesn't feel worthy. She doesn't know what her role is, and it's not everyone, because there's some just sort of, but it happens an awful lot. And it's not got anything to do with the male caretaker. It's just that the way things have gone, and it's not the male caretakers. They haven't caused it. It's the female not feeling worthy and not knowing how to. So it's sort of like conditioning that has got in the way. So a lot of that has to be lifted off. So they need to do work on themselves so they feel equal.
Totally. Yeah. And again, that could just be cultural too. And it's not going off what you said before about blame. Like, it's not a blame thing. It's not your fault or my fault or anything. It's just what's happened, right? And
that's right. No one's fault. Yeah.
So
it is just what's happened, and we've got to get over that. Like, it's happened, it's past, whatever.
Yeah.
Let's be in the present. Let's see how we can, work together, find a way, and then allow it to sort of evolve into whatever it's meant to be. Because I have no idea what the future is. I know that there's infinite possibilities, but I have no idea what they could be. You get people all working together instead of people working separated. Man, we could change things really quickly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It'll be huge.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And so do you think then we need more women in agriculture then? And that'd be safe to say, yeah?
I think it's not about one or the other. That's the most important bit. It's not about male or female. But I've from the people that I've worked with, a lot of females don't know what their role is. They don't, they don't have to go in and do the work that maybe the male loves doing. It's finding that role. And the only way I can explain it is male plant seed. This is an absolute true fact. Male plant seed, female give life to it. That is how creation happens, isn't it? It doesn't happen any other way. So that can apply through the whole system. And so if you've got 2 people working together, co-creating, it's amazing what can happen. Diane are an example of that. I hope they don't mind, but they even share their food. So they buy meals and then they eat half and half, because that's just, they just, Di does her bit, Ian does his bit.
Little cuties, aren't they?
Yeah, it is. I know. And you don't know these things if you're on the outside looking in. But that's what's important. It's the more people start to work together and not blame. It's not about he said or she said or whatever. It's just, let's just try and find a way, and then we'll be able to work naturally, and we'll have a healthy microbiome. We'll have people that'll be happy, health. I mean, there's another one, health. Look at the health system.
Oh man. Well,
I mean,
do you want to go there? Do you want to go there, Jane?
No.
Hey,
I don't think we
to.
should.
I'm happy
No,
to.
but I don't think we should call it a health system though, because
No,
it's not. It's not
it's
health.
what did someone call it the other day? Disease care. It's not
Yeah,
healthcare.
disease care.
Yeah,
No, and
exactly.
it's ripe. It's just everywhere. So why would how can we even not start to look at new ways of doing things? Or it's just there's people, don't worry, there's and I know there's people that know things and whatever, and there is heaps of ways to work through this. Totally. And it doesn't even have to be hard. It's just
it's just finding the others, really, essentially, isn't it? It's everyone, it's all there, and we've got all the answers we need. I mean, it's just how we find each other in such noisy times,
through doing things like this, David.
Yeah, exactly. And finding ourselves, and working on ourselves, because like you're saying, if we don't do that simple one step, we're not in a position or really able to care correctly or love correctly. I mean, there's all these cliche things that come up all the time that you hear it so much as a child or like as a teen or whatever. And that's one of them, you can't love someone else until you love yourself or whatever. But, it's just like something that gets spat out all the time without any real thought about it. I mean, at least, and then one day it just sinks in, like right now, like it's just such a common thing, but it's just not really understood or felt again in the heart. But when you do feel it like that, it's amazing. That could change the world.
And if you don't feel good about yourself, how are other people that feel good about themselves? Like if we're all pieces of a puzzle, how is everybody going to find one another?
Yeah.
Like if people are turned off and totally separated from themselves, then you've got people that are reconnecting with self. It is a matter of, it's a bit like a magnetic force field that all these people start to come together, because we're not all the same. We're all a piece of like a jigsaw puzzle, and we're just really trying to bring all those pieces together.
Totally. Like that beautiful mandala behind you in your background. It's all getting connected up, and it's all in the palm of our hands. Yeah. You had quite a special lunch a couple of weeks ago. Was it a month ago now, where you hung out with some really cool people? Could you tell us a little bit about the sentiment and how you felt after hanging out with those crew? And it was Dr. Zach Bush and the Farmers Footprint Australia crew, was it? And
and Joost Bakker.
Joost Bakker, yeah.
And I don't know all the people that were there, because there was 18 people. I felt so privileged to be invited to that. It was because of the lovely Christy Stewart. She was part of the cooking team, and she sort of just mentioned, and AJ was there as well, and Tanya Massey was there. We were there for 7 hours. It was an awesome day, most beautiful spot. And we ended up at one stage, Zach went ding, ding, ding on the glass, and he was talking to a lovely lady opposite him, but I can't remember her name. Apologies for that. And he just said, I think we all need to join in on this discussion. And it was talking about how to get good food to people, to consumers. And it was a really interesting conversation, because it made me think of the isolation of where Diane are and what Diane are really trying to do, in that, and also a lot of my clients, because they're producing this wonderful food, whether it be seeds, meat, whatever, milk, and then there's no way of really getting that to the consumer, because unless they start their own processing system,
whole supply chain, really.
Supply, they've got to start. And it's like, that's just, there's not enough time to do what there is to be a farmer, let alone to have to think about all this. So the conversation basically went to, I wish I had AJ here right now, because I'm sure he could put it into really good words. But I didn't think I would speak as much as what I did, and I did say quite a bit. And one of the things that I said, if farmers were paid for diversity, then they would be able to set up the system that they need to be able to get the product that they're producing, like the quality I'm talking about, yes, which is working with the microbiome, working with natural intelligence. They would be able to get that to the consumers. And because what they'd be able to do is, if they were paid properly for the diversity, then they would be able to pay the people that could set these systems up. And then there would be people, more than likely, in towns, cities, that would love to work in these situations. And one of the things that was, you could say, for instance, at Dine-In's, you could set a whole community up there, which is one of Dine-In's passions. But it's almost like starting with a meal, and then how do you get that product to the consumers? That's fine. It's not for them to do it because that's not their passion. There's someone else that's passionate about that. Yeah. But then the other thing comes with that, that's fine. Have the money, that the meal could be set up. Someone else comes in, runs that. There's people that have got all the knowledge to set the mill up. Yeah. Then you need to put houses out there, because, as you know, there's nowhere for people to live. So if you're going to set up, so it's the whole. And is it really just what we? Not that we're not going back. Where we are is where we are, but is that what we used to have when we used to have communities of people and farmers used to provide for the community? And now it seems to be what we maybe think is good food gets exported overseas, and and then. I mean, and whether that is or not, I don't know.
And we buy it back,
and we buy it back in, and but it's like it gives a role then to people. I'm sure that there are a lot of people that are misplaced, that are in places where they're not meant to be, and if they were where they were supposed to be, they would be so happy and loving what they're doing, and we would be able to, I guess, we would be able to get the food to the consumers, because I don't believe we're going to get the good food to the consumers with the current system the way that it is. So absolutely. That's sort of what got spoken about. Wow. And it was really good. It was a really good day. And then after that, Zach Bush played the piano for us. And it was awesome.
What a man.
So I've just summed that up really simply. Do you know what I mean?
It's beautiful. And it's and such a good point, about how do we get this food to market, because people want it. That's not the problem.
No, people want it, but there's no way of getting it. Like Dine-In, there's meat, they've got a market for the wool now. There's the grains and everything, and a lot of it just gets sold into with the other grain. I want to say not microbiome sort of type food. But it's whatever people are doing, because there is no. And that's what got brought up too. Is it's really hard to get farmers to change. And I said, no, it's not. I said it's not hard to get farmers to change. I said, why would they want to change when the system doesn't actually provide a way for them? If they change and focus on producing a better quality product, they've got no way of getting there. So there's no carrot dangling. There's nothing there.
That's right. There's not a system in place to support them as they, not just a transition, but where are they going to? It's it's like taking a plunge and like you were in the early days, I guess, just blind faith. I think that's probably the people that are coming to this space are feeling that as well, that are producing I guess food that has that microbiological integrity. People that make that change, it's usually driven by ethics or a deep feeling where they just can't produce the other stuff anymore, or it's a legacy piece or whatever it is. But like you're saying, if there were that system in place to help those people through, which is and I make sure I tip the hat to Mark Taylor and at the crew at Miller and Baker, because they've done a fantastic job of getting Dine-In's grains to market and to people in Perth. So
And I actually got to visit there when I was over, and it was amazing. So Mark actually spent some time just showing me how it all worked. Yeah. And it was just awesome to see that. And I really got an understanding, which I don't know that a lot of people would, like when the grain is milled, it gets milled into flour, and then I can't remember what he called it, but a bit like a semolina. And then you've got the bran. And then they've got where they mill it and they keep all of it together, and they're making the bread out of that. And he said, you know, it is about educating the people because the bread is heavier, and they're working with, you know, different ways to try and make it a bit lighter, because that's what people look for. But that bread, it was just amazing. And, you know, we take all this goodness out of it, and yet all that goodness should be left in there. And yeah, and it was funny because I hope Mark doesn't mind me saying this, but he said, it's really, he said, depends on the baker. And yeah, and I said, well, have you found that if the baker loves doing what he's doing, then it tends to, like, the quality of, he goes, yeah, funny you say that. And I said, yeah, it's a bit like that, isn't it? Like, I just felt like I had to say that. I just felt like I had to say it because.
But it just shows it's all the way around, isn't it?
Yeah, because if they don't love doing what they're doing, then I guess if you use that word, there's no, you know, the love's not going to be there. And if the love's not there, I mean, and people love coming to the bakery, but what if there was love, more, you know, more love in it, and people really understood just how important it was? Yeah, he said that that's improving. Like he seems to be attracting bakers now that are really loving what he's doing, which has been good. Whereas I think in the beginning, it's like anything. When you first start off with something, you know, it's just your idea, and it's something that you work with. Not everyone's going to have that same feeling or that same passion. Yeah. But as it starts to take off, and then, you know, those people start hearing comments and, oh, wow, this is really good. And, you know, then other people, it starts attracting. Maybe those ones that were hiding, you know, they were doing something that they didn't really enjoy, and all of a sudden they go, there's something in that, I need to get there. I've got to go and work for that person. Yep. That's that. Yeah. So that's the souls linking up.
It is. Yeah. We got to go to Mark's after that too. We're actually up when, so Mark and Brendan, his old baker, came up to Diane's place, and we were doing a bit of a story on how the grain goes from there to the bakery and gets milled and all that. And so we actually saw the wheat that got picked up, and then the next week we were in Perth and we saw the wheat, and we actually saw the wheat in the field even earlier in the year. So like, got to see it this whole way through. And when I tasted that bread, I literally cried, like, because I was like, I've eaten bread my whole life and I've never appreciated it for what it is and had this connection to it. It's making me a bit teary now. But the that bread was just, it's just like, it was like medicinal. It was like and I just, I've never had that experience with any food really. I mean, yes, the tomatoes you go and pick out in the garden or whatever, and like Zach says, they always taste better, but to see something that we eat daily, like bread, that is being turned into, like you say, such a commodity, and just not appreciated. And I just had this moment where, like, holy shit, I can never eat other bread again.
And the other thing that happened with that though is the seed was grown with love. Brendan came and picked it up, right? So it didn't just get put on a truck to get sent down there. Yep. So there's been, you know, and that's a fair drive from Perth out to Diane's to go pick that up. And then it gets there, and then Mark is, you know, he's loving it as well. Yep. And then that's all processing. So what you got to taste and what you got, and why that made you feel like that, is because the love got all the way through to the consumer. Wow. And with the current system, that doesn't happen. There's a story. We did I don't want to call it a field day, but had some of my nifs all on a dairy farm down the southeast. And his milk gets sold into a biodynamic factory. And it was really interesting, the comments that happened, because we actually got to drink the milk on the farm, and it wasn't out the vat. He'd actually gone and purchased the milk from the shop and brought it to the farm. Now there was two, three, four, maybe 5 people that were there that had gone and purchased this milk before, and it tasted nothing like the milk when we drank it there, me included, right? And so we were all sort of working it all out because we asked questions and whatever. And we worked out that because the milk is not valued by the factory that is purchasing the milk because of how he works on his farm with his dairy cows, because the milk is not valued, the love stays on the farm. But when the milk was brought back to the farm in the carton, yeah, you can feel that, can't you? The love reconnected with the milk, and we all got to taste it. And so just as an example of that, a couple of us went and bought the milk afterwards when we got home.
That's shit.
Because we thought, maybe we just bought it before and it just wasn't quite right. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And it was exactly the same as what we always have, but it was the love that was in there, and it was absolutely beautiful. Like, it was just, and it wasn't out the vat. So I just want that to be clear, because I know milk out the vat, you can't compare drinking milk out the vat to when it's been processed. And we're not comparing it to that. We're comparing it as the same bottled, because we got to taste it and what it would be like, and the most perfect thing that could happen there is that a processing plant gets set up there, and that milk gets turned into a product to go directly to consumers that would love to have that milk.
And ideally, then they come out there and pick it up too, and get exposed to that love and that microbiome while they're there.
Yeah, they can come pick it up. It can be for the town, whatever. And even if some can't, if there's a little, if it's the right person and if it's all being done. But you got to get, so you can put the love into, so you can have the love on the farm, but if it's not being valued, which a lot of products, a lot of what's being produced off farm is not valued, so that love stays on the farm. It doesn't get to the consumer. And then the consumer goes, but when you taste something, like you said, when you taste the love that's in the food,
that's so cool. That's really, really cool. And
the chef that, because when the chef that actually cooked at the luncheon, the Zach Bush luncheon that I went to, I had the privilege of being driven back to Melbourne with her, and her name is Frankie, and she actually was saying, because she's opened I can't think of the name of her shop, and I wish I could. I think it's called Go Green, but I'm not sure. And it's in Melbourne. And she's opened this up, and she actually goes, I think she said it's to somewhere near Geelong, where she goes and she actually picks the produce to come to her shop, because that's the only way that she knows. And I know it's exactly the same. So that way, the love from those producers, she can carry that all the way to her shop, and she can get that to the consumers. I think it is that simple. I'm using one word, but that's what we're talking about. Because when farmers love doing what they're doing, but it's can't get that love out to the consumers, and we need to find a way to do that. So it's a very different system to what's there at the moment. So that was just another thing. I just felt like I had to say that.
Thank you. And how important do you think that is for our health and the digestibility and all that comes with the food? I mean, because we're not getting that at all in any of we're shopping at Woolies and Coles and shit.
But even if the system was right, even if it was Woolies and Coles, and if the farmers were being valued and the system was set up properly, and the farmers were being paid for what they should be getting paid, it's not to say, I don't think it's about, who's to say that can't happen. I mean, it might not be done like it is now. And is that, when I say loving the food, is that what the animals were trying to tell me when they said, Jane, where's the energy? We need the energy, because it couldn't get through.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's what I reckon it's about.
Because if we're just here and it's not flowing through, then it's blocked. Yeah. Something
because the people block that. Yep.
I was feeling of saying that at the beginning when you were saying about that whole energy thing. To me, it was like, well, is it a feeling maybe, or that love thing? So it's come out anyway. That's really cool.
Well, love is a feeling, isn't it?
Totally.
but it's a feeling that you need to feel for yourself, not feeling from someone else.
And it's
like
an energy too. Like
it is an energy.
Yeah.
It is energy. That's exactly what it is. It's like best way to describe it, because it's not something tangible. It's a feeling. I mean, it is tangible. So to me, energy probably wasn't tangible many years ago, but it is tangible now.
Yeah.
And then we can link so many other things into it. But it's just one way of explaining it in a simple word.
Yeah. So cool. What's next for the NIF as well? Like natural intelligence farming is when we say NIF, for anyone that's wondering of what we said before. Keep growing the NIF out, or the community. It's expanding. Keep storytelling. I think this is a huge step. You're getting the word out, because it creates a lexicon and language around these sorts of topics. Like, I don't think without that bridge of natural intelligence farming to get to this last 10-minute discussion we've just had about food and love for food, it'd be really hard to understand at least how to cultivate that without sounding really wacky or, so is it just working with more farmers and trying to, putting it out for those that hear the call?
It is, and I've also started. I never know exactly how to put it in. Like, I'm working with 3 people now that are actually working with their own clients, just starting to. You probably met them at the event. So there's Robin Tate in Tassie.
She's a beauty.
And so she's got a really, and it's like it takes time to understand about how to work with the natural intelligence principles, and because a lot of it is about working with people and empowering people to be able to work with their intuition and work, and be able to ask the questions, and it just takes a bit. So she's done lots of work on herself, which she'll openly admit. And so Robin has some clients which I actually sort of work with as well. So that's how I'm we work together. So we have conference calls, and then that's how Robin's sort of been able to learn. It's not something I've been able to figure out yet, that you can set up a program. I think we're starting to get where we're getting some guidelines, which is really good. And that's only happening because of this, because working with Robin, Robin's sort of, how's this, blah, blah, asked me lots of questions, which is great. And then we've also got Jim and Em Alexander, who are in New South Wales. And Jim's actually just flown out today to the United States. He's just finishing off his Nuffield thing that he was doing. And so they've just started with their first client in working with the natural intelligence principles as well. So this is just sort of, so I think my role will become a little bit more working with other people so that they can, I'm still having, I'm still not going to stop doing what I do as well. And then I've started doing workshops as well now. So, which sort of, that happened at the event where it was 40 people at the end. I was like, that's too many. That was too many.
Let's just say that was after a full field day, by the way. That's a full day out, and then a 5-hour drive back to the city for a lot of people, and they've stuck around. 40 people. That just blew me away.
Oh, it blew me away. And we didn't have, we sort of had about an hour. I think we ended up sitting there for a couple of hours. And it was just, I couldn't get into, there wasn't when I do a workshop, it's a whole day. Because, and I've also worked out now, 20 is a nice number. And people have to be pretty vulnerable. Like I said on that thing, but it's really good because they feel supported. So I'm really enjoying that. And that, it's so that sort of happened. I've had one in Victoria, and which Jim and Em made it back from Western Australia to attend that, and Robin was there, so they got to sort of see. And then me, Diane, are going to Rockhampton.
Yeah, I saw that. How good. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the
natural
next
intelligence farming on tour. You beauty.
Yeah, yeah.
Can I be a groupie? No.
Yeah, you can come along. And Nicola Maddock as well. So
awesome.
from Nutrisoil. So that's going to be really good. And then I'm 3 people, 3 lovely gentlemen from Queensland who went to the event, said if I'm in Queensland, let them know. So I'm going there afterwards and doing a workshop and a few farm visits and whatever. So
amazing.
I'm just going with the flow.
Good.
Not putting anything on it. I have no idea, but just
Opening,
whatever will be.
Opening up, Jane. It's bloody awesome.
Yeah. So
and I just appreciate you so much and the work that you're doing and your openness, your courage to speak out about these things, and you know, for doing what you do. It's vitally important, and I think it is the beginning of this huge shift that is taking place in humanity across the board. You know, it's like we're about to level up again, and I'm sure Zach would have talked about this a lot more eloquently than I could ever do, but you know, it does feel like we're at this, we either evolve soon and quickly and it happens, or it's not looking that good. But I love the message of, even if it is an extinction event, more beauty will emerge out the other side, and not to carry that fear of death or the end, because it's not the end. We're just getting started, and not to be doom and gloomy, but it's this is it. It's beautiful life, and what a gift.
Yeah, I see it that if we take the focus off trying to fix the planet and put the focus on us, I don't see that we would have the problems that everyone is seeing. I really do truly believe that, and that's a huge statement. But if everybody could if everyone was actually not feeling separated and actually feeling reconnected to themselves, feeling whole and fulfilled, it would be such a different world. It really would. You know, so I know that it starts with us. It's not about, if we keep looking outside of ourselves, then we're still doing the same as what we've always been doing, because that's what we've been doing forever and it's not working. So if we look at it the other way around and start doing the work on self, then caretakers, the farms are going to really, they're going to really improve. Nature's going to become abundant. The whole system is going to become abundant, where we pretty much live in lack mentality. Yes. We live in a death culture that has a lack mentality, and we need to change that death culture to a live culture that has abundance mentality. And probably that's the only place where the head's good. If the head can maybe program that in, then it might be a bit easier to get to the heart. I didn't know that was coming out like that.
I'm lost for words.
That just come out.
That's really nice. I think that's a beautiful way to finish. Unless you got anything else of beauty, of such beauty, that's going to flow in again. I mean, that's awesome. And
no, that's just flat out.
Thank you so much, Jane, for your time today. And I really look forward to following your journey, helping assist in any way we can. And until the next conversation, and watch this space.
And thank you to you, David. I was nervous about doing this, but I really knew that I needed to. And so I pushed myself to do it. So I'm so glad that I did.
Did you get a yes?
I did. Yes, I did. That's right. And so I get a yes. Okay, I've got to push through this now. Yep. Okay. Yep.
Oh, you wouldn't be here.
No, because I wouldn't be here.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you.
you.